Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters, and I'm quite excited to talk to Mohsin Raza today, who has a PhD. I should be really be calling him Dr. Mohsin because he has a PhD from Iowa State University, and he's currently a data science fellow at the University of Exeter. First of all, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. We hear so much about food scarcity, and that will be a huge problem for the world. So I'm quite excited to talk to you because your research revolves around diseases affecting crops, and Pakistan mainly being an agricultural country. As far as all the problems that we face, where would you rank this? Or out of 10, how big a problem is the crops we lose to diseases in Pakistan?
Okay, first of all, thanks Shahzad bhai for having me and giving me the chance actually to express my information about this topic. If we talk about in terms of food security, it's a very hot topic, and most of the educated people know about the Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations. So it is one of the most important sustainable goals to get like a hunger-free world. But the further actually fuel that is added by is the climate change. And Pakistan is one of those countries who are like the hotspot of climate change. So like we might not be contributing much to climate change, but we are experiencing a lot. And for last like couple of years, we have seen there are like sudden changes in weather patterns, their frequencies. So that's all. So all that is basically adding to affecting like agriculture, and that in turn basically affecting our like food production and agriculture. So, and if we simply like talk about agriculture, there are many things which affect crop production, but diseases are like a component other than like insects or other unwanted plants that we call like weed. And if we talk about again like in terms of climate change, so again climate change is affecting those factors as well. So this is basically a very complex and I would say like not double faced but like three edge, like a kind of like a sword that is affecting like not only one angle of the triangle but like all components of the this food chain. So it's a very quite hot topic or a very important issue.
So you obviously have a PhD in the subject, but for our listeners out there who may not understand, when we hear of climate change, we may just think of the environment or the weather. But how do we think about this a lot more holistically? Because you mentioned disease, you mentioned insects. Does that also, does climate change also have an effect on that? Because we recently saw an invasion of locusts, not to be biblical about it, but all of that, is that also climate change induced?
Yes. For example, might be we have already like pathogens, but we do not see their impacts because the weather actually does not favor them. But with climate change, we have seen because the environment is changing. So it means that those pathogens are getting like favorable environment. So, or even like including pests and weeds. So, and they can grow like in a huge exponentially. So that's why we are expected to see a lot amount of like new invasive pathogens or the species that were already there, but the weather was not favorable them. But now with climate change, so they are having like a huge amount of favorable weather, and locust attack is one of those examples. For example, when they were like migrating or moving from one continent to other continent, there was a stop point because like after that point, weather was not favorable for them. But with climate change, their migration has been prolonged actually. So that is basically giving them a safe haven kind of stuff. So that's why we have seen like out of the sudden, okay, from like why they are like coming now, not before that, because there are like sudden change or like gradual changes in the weather or the climate, which are favoring them or favoring their movement. So I would say like, yeah, that's also actually another impact or other phase of climate change.
So you've mentioned the pathogens. Do these pathogens exist around the world? Because the most we hear about is this idea of permafrost, that the permafrost is melting. So there's certain pathogens, a certain bacteria, which was frozen centuries ago, and that's now being unfrozen and they're being unleashed in the world. Is that specifically what you're talking about, or these pathogens exist around the world and differing weather conditions bring them out?
In kind of like permafrost, I really like haven't heard those like in terms of plant diseases. But in terms of like if we talk about especially diseases about crops, so every day, even like we see plant disease journals, I don't see like that much research, like actual research, but every day they update about like newly reported pathogen species. So the currently like research group I'm working on, so a couple of years ago they published an article like in Nature, and they says like these pathogens may already be present, but they were not like visible enough, or we were not noticing their attack or like their presence because weather was not suitable them. And now because weather is becoming suitable them, and they are like sprouting and they are growing and they are affecting plants. So now we are, and with the passage of time, we are getting like more tools and techniques, so we are able actually to diagnose and detect them as well. So but hypothesis is that they may be like already present, but previously weather was not suitable for them. But now because recently like there is a paper published in Nature Foods that says that area under production is expanding like northwards towards poles, so which means like farmers will be growing crops in more like at like higher latitudes. So as the crops will be growing that side or moving that side, the pathogen will be moving that side as well. So there are basically these kind of evidences we have so far. So yeah, so if in future if we are expecting to see high area under production, we are also expecting to see high yield loss as well. So
So
yeah.
there are Fulbright Pakistan alumni working in different fields and doing phenomenal work. We also had a Fulbright Pakistan alum talk about antibiotic resistance within animals, and we've heard about antibiotic resistance with humans as well. So with plants, is that also a factor? Are they developing resistance, or are these diseases and bacteria developing resistance to our existing fertilizer or urea or whatever we use to kill them? Are they also developing a resistance to that?
Yes, resistance is like of different types. Antibiotics is basically mainly used against like bacterial pathogens. In plant diseases, we use fungicides. These are the chemicals that kill pathogens that belongs to fungi, like the same family where we see like these mushrooms or these kind of like fungus like that we usually like eat in our daily life. So basically they are from the same kingdom. So yes, because of like their unjudicious application in growth field, certain pathogens and their classes, they have developed resistance. But there is another kind of resistance that is basically against the genetic resistance. For example, one of the main important or effective solution we have against pathogen is developing resistant varieties. Like we have every year in Pakistan, even like our research institutes, they produce locally resistant wheat varieties or cotton varieties. But these pathogens also got like resistance against those like genetic resistant varieties as well. So because they are co-evolving, for example, like those pathogens and the resistance genes in plants, they have seen each other like or they know each other for a long time. So one year we develop a new variety with new genes. In year 2 or 3 or maybe like maximum 5 years, those pathogen actually overcome that resistance. So yeah, in terms of resistance, the same story exists in plants as well.
So what we now hear about genetically modified crops, are they better? Are they more resistant? Because we do hear about the evil of genetically modified crops, how they destroy fields, and you're not able to, farm organically once you use GMO crops. But on the flip side, are they potentially better, or are they more resistant to diseases and bacteria?
Uh, that's a really good question. And I would say the basic idea of like developing these genetically modified crops was to meet the targets of like food demand. And I would say like both like we have to give and take. Maybe we lose something when we are developing genetically modified foods. Maybe like, let's say the example of like hybrids. So we have improved the production like many times, but we are losing the quality, we are losing the fragrance, or we are losing the taste. But with the develop like more like modified tools, especially this like CRISPR-Cas9 system. So now scientists have this ability, they can edit genes at fast or like effectively. But in terms of like GMOs, if we talk about like generally, yes, they are effective against pathogens and they have the potential to meet our food demands. But there is work actually that needs to be done over their acceptance. So we are not actually, the general public is not ready to accept them, but they are quite effective. And that is the main idea behind their development.
There are a bunch of factors, especially I think farmers are against them because they tend to destroy fields. And then there's obviously that distrust of big corporations that enter into markets
Exactly.
like India and Pakistan. And we've had a fractured history with them. So what they may do in the future, I do get the skepticism from the farmers.
Yeah, exactly. That is true, actually. That is not like some hidden thing. But what I would recommend is every country, they should develop or they should invest in their own R&Ds. So do not like put all the baskets in somebody else, like all eggs in somebody else's basket. So, but with rising population, we have to meet actually food demand. So, and that is actually one of the ways, but there are many other ways actually, introducing like many new things, many new crops in our food chain. We can meet actually this threat. But yeah, this is actually kind of concerns that still exist against about the GMOs.
So it may seem like we're living in a dystopian reality if you go to an American superstore chain and you see a square seedless watermelon, but you're telling us that's the future.
Yeah, that is actually, we have to live with that, because if we want to meet the demands of like growing population, we have to live with that. Here, like I'm currently in Exeter, and the other day, like one of my colleague was telling that just like a few miles away, there is a organic farm, and they do not apply any kind of like, they do not use any kind of resistant varieties. They use their domestic varieties that they have like received from their forefathers. They do not apply any kind of chemicals. They do not apply any kind of like measures, but they are getting nothing actually, because pathogens are there, insects are there, weeds are there, so they are destroying like their final crop produce. So maybe like it's enough for their farm or their people, but if they want to sell it, even it is not even profitable. So how they want to like they are about to like sustain.
So this entire movement that we now see towards organic farming, towards organic produce, you're saying it's just a fad for some people and it's not sustainable at all.
It can be, but we have to then suffer from other sides as well, because it is quite expensive.
Hmm.
And not every, especially if we look in terms of Pakistan, how many people are like capable of buying those organic stuff?
I
People
was
are,
under the impression that we don't call it organic, but classically everything that we get in Pakistan is organic.
no, we are the one of those countries actually which apply in the region, including China, India. We are those nations actually which highly invest in inputs in terms of seeds, in terms of fungicides, in terms of chemicals, in terms of fertilizers, and we are getting less yield. So I won't say like it's highly organic. We are using every kind of like thing actually to improve our crop production. So we are using testing every kind of chemical that is dangerous for us.
So those ads that we grew up watching on, I'm sure you must have seen them on PTV as well about American Sundi attacking crops and how urea and pesticides are great. So are you suggesting that what we do is we just take a lot of these fungicides and pesticide and just blanket throw them onto the crops, hoping one of them hits, and that actually is causing more harm than good?
Exactly. And with this unjudicious application of these chemicals, the thing we just talk about is those like American bollworm actually, or pink bollworm, or a white fly, they already have developed enough resistance, and now they have like many biotypes. So biotype is basically a further type within a species that attack on a specific group. So how they become of like resistance. So there are like a few years ago when I used to be a student at University of Agriculture, Faisalabad. So I know that there were more than 50 biotypes. Like within one species, there are more than 50 types that were like hard to control. And these are the some hard realities due to which we have entirely changed our cotton belt and moved towards sugarcane. So there is like we throw actually everything like bluntly in Pakistan. So we cannot say that we are producing something like organic, and and that is not only affecting on us, but there is a lot of like diversity or flora and fauna that is actually just fade away because of these chemicals. In when I brought up basically at farm, and I used to see many different kind of birds actually, especially if I talk about. And when I went back after like graduation from America, so I was unable to even like point those that where are those gone actually. This is what because of like chemicals and unjudicious application of chemicals, because we are not taking care of these kind of things.
So I would have assumed it wouldn't affect the birds. Is it because it affects their diets? They eat those worms. Why are birds not coming because of pesticides?
Exactly. So basically, so these are the chemicals, you know, like you might have heard the term like shelf life or half life. So these are the times after which pathogen actually they, oh sorry, the chemicals, they lose their, you know, like potency. So these chemicals, like they have long term or long half lives or shelf lives. So when insects, they consume them, although like insects die, but those chemicals remain inside them. So when the birds actually eat them, so those chemicals actually affect them adversely as well. And this is how this is the term we use in biology that's called, or ecology is called, like bioaccumulation. So this effects get accumulated and it get transferred to further in the food chain. So this
So
does not affect only like our soil, but also the microbes in the soil. And those microbes, there are many like friendly microbes as well. So similarly, the birds who are eating those worms and any like entity or species who are eating those birds, they are getting affected.
So what about us? So if they're spraying it on the crops, and at the end of the day, we're eating the crops, are we too far removed to be affected by those with cooking, or do we also inevitably end up consuming some pesticides?
Sometimes we end up anything like we eat directly without cooking, but cooking has definitely a like adverse effect on their chemical, like their potency. So maybe we get safe from those sides, but still we can see like cancer is spreading in our country, like other like other problems which are due to like these chemicals, kidneys, livers. So this could be the like result of these kind of stuff.
So what's the solution? How do we save ourselves?
One of the important solution is again like developing resistant varieties, and in majority of the crops actually we already have developed that. And one thing I would like to mention here, when I stayed like for 2 years back in Pakistan. So this is the attitude of our farmers. Whenever they see a problem, they quickly ask what chemical we should apply. So they do not have any other thing in their mind. For example, I had my master's research on wheat rusts. So rust is a disease that every year we see in Pakistan, and it becomes like very quite prominent or notorious disease for wheat. And you know, wheat is our staple food crop, so it is hardly high, like nobody recommends to apply fungicides. But recent years, I have seen a trend of that farmers are applying fungicides. And when I see requests or like messages, people sending me those pictures and they said me, okay, recommend us a chemical. I said like, I don't want to recommend any chemical, because feed of wheat, whatever we produce, it directly goes to like in the market. And there is not enough time that we get fade away from. And these diseases showing up when the pathogen is already making, the plants are already making their seeds. So first and most important thing is try to use those varieties which have some sort of resistance against these pathogens. And then there are other factors you need to consider when managing diseases is what time they are appearing, because their time, it has like a strong relationship with the yield loss that farmers are going to see. So if they are appearing earlier, there is a chance you have to do something. Otherwise, even if you apply like tons of chemicals, they're just going to cost you and you will not get any benefit. So first and most important thing is, and safe side is resistant varieties.
So this Jetsons future that we see, where we don't need to consume wheat and we can just have a pill and have all our nutritional needs taken care of, that may be too far-fetched. But are we headed towards a world where somehow technology is able to give us all the nutrients and food without it actually coming from a farm?
Um, that would be possible in coming few years, but I won't see like as that just like after
Not
tomorrow.
anytime soon.
Yeah, at any time soon. It will take time, and especially for a country like Pakistan, where people maybe like they are ready to adopt, like get new, they don't really want to buy like a new iPhone or like a laptop, but these kind of technologies, especially the farming community, they are hardly ready to accept these kind of stuff. So yeah.
So if we do talk about your journey as well, I mean, at this point, you're an expert in the field. You're also at the University of Exeter. So you mentioned that you also started from a rural family and you started from a farm.
Yes. We had like a farm around like 50 acres. So this is where small village in Dipalpur, Okada. Okada is basically district and Dipalpur is Tehsil. So this is where
Quite
actually
a checkered history of Okada farms in Pakistan.
yeah, actually basically that's those are the cities of like potato and corn or maize production. And we get like highest yield in our region, especially in those crops. But we do grow actually rice and wheat as well, but those are especially for our like own domestic purposes. But we highly sell or like corn and potatoes. So yeah, I was brought up there, and then for my matriculation, I went to Okada for my like mother's parents' home, and for my college. At that time, we did not have like a good quality education, but
Mm.
now we know like with all these Punjab colleges and Aspire colleges, all this kind of stuff. So these changes are new. Actually, they came recently. At that time, we just had like government colleges. So for my FSC, I went to Government College Saiwal, and after that, I joined University of Agriculture, Faisalabad.
How did you develop an interest, or at what point did you think that diseases affecting crops or agriculture, that is something I should focus on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. In my fourth semester in University of Agriculture, and especially like in sixth semester, so I took a course on plant diseases, and so this professor actually he had like long ago like his PhD from America. So his teaching style and the way he used to describe like these data, graphics, epidemics, outbreaks, and so that actually interested me the most. So I said I want to go that side. So this is like how actually I ended up. Otherwise, I had like a good GPA, and I wanted to go to other fields like agronomy or soil sciences. But this is how I ended up, especially in the field of epidemiology, that is studying diseases in populations using data. So that was a mixture, and I just like got interested in that side. But then actually rest is the history.
Let's get into that history. So
Yeah.
specifically, when we talk about the Fulbright, what is it that when you went on a Fulbright that you focused on, that you thought was the most pertinent?
So when I wrote my essays for Fulbright, I focused on wheat, and I said like I will work on wheat because wheat is a staple food crop of Pakistan. So I developed some methodology that I will use these XYZ technologies, especially like this remote sensing and GIS or some geostatistics. But and it was my top priority that I go to Iowa State University. That is a stronghold of agriculture, statistics, GIS, and remote sensing, all of those stuff. And it won't be wrong if I call like it's the Punjab of America. So but when I went there I come to know that they only grow like two crops, that is corn or soybean. And the lab I joined, they were working on soybean. So, and I discussed with my professor that these were my ideas, and he said like crop doesn't matter. So this is the point where you want to learn different like philosophies or like
Mm.
technologies, tools, methodologies. So this is just like focus on these, and you can in future you can apply these techniques on any other pathogen or cropping system. So yeah, so this is how I switched from like wheat to soybean. But then I worked on, but I kept those ideas in my mind that what I wanted to work. And I remember like when I graduated, I had my PhD defense. So one day I opened those like essays or like my Fulbright application. So I was going like one by one. I was checking like, okay, I done this. Okay, I have learned this. I have learned this. I have learned this. Okay, just like crops and pathogens are different, but I have learned everything that I wanted to learn.
What are these some of the things that you learned from your Fulbright experience?
If we, in terms of like my research or overall,
Yes. In terms of your research, and then we'll get to
yeah,
overall as well.
research, I was like quite very enthusiastic to learn all these new tools, especially like when I went to Iowa State. So this data science term was quite new, and I got like interested because I was already like analyzing data and developing some smaller level models. So then I just like had some research like discussion with our like colleagues and friends. So I came to know, okay, there's like a quite independence, and I can take as many courses as I want and as much like as I can do. So as long as I'm doing my work. So yeah, actually, so everything that I wanted to do, I wanted to learn geographical information system, where we start like doing analyzing data that is in space, like mapping, basically mapping the data and then doing some advanced level analysis. So I choose that as my second major, and I took all the courses for that, like, their requirements, and then there were like pretty statistics courses that I took. So then at the end, like my expertise was like a mixture of agriculture, statistics, geographic information system, their statistics, and then like remote sensing, taking data from sensors, UAVs, and satellite images. So yeah, that was a kind of mixture. My research was basically a mixture of all these components.
We keep harping on this podcast about the fact that it's the Fulbright experience. It's not just the education. You already mentioned that you were in Ohio, the land of corn farmers. How was that
Iowa,
experience?
Iowa State actually.
Oh, sorry, Iowa.
Mhm.
How is that experience going from a farm in Pakistan to Iowa, which also is known for its farmlands?
It was quite good actually. So I got chance to experience work with like farmers in Iowa as well.
Mhm.
So although like they only had like two crops in our farm or in our area, we have kind of like diverse things. So for example, we are growing corn. After that, it comes to like potatoes, and same time we are growing like wheat, and then after the season we are growing rice, and then like corn. But
Apparently, that's
in
better for the land and the soil.
exactly, that is
Okay.
better. But in Iowa, because in winter the temperature gets like so freezing, like it can goes to easily like -20, and sometimes we have seen like -30, -35 as well. So they only have like one season, and in one season they have corn or soybean. So if farmers has a plot, so in 2020 if he has like a soybean, the next year it will be corn, and then after that year it will be like soybean again. So that was a different thing for me, because there is no more like other crops in this area. But then I come to know that because of weather, it's not favorable for other crops. So that's how like they are going. So there are many like things matter actually when it comes to like growing which kind of crops and which kind of things actually we want to do here.
So, what are some of the things that you learned on the Fulbright experience that still educate your work?
In terms of overall, or
Yes.
it was like a great chance. And you know, like in America, we learned everything. So, and most of the stuff actually that we do not see or experience in Pakistan. So, beside my education, I got a chance to do some community work, and this is how I learned actually community work in America. Then I also got a chance to participate in student organizations. I went to student government as well. So for 1 year, I was representative of my department in Graduate Student Senate. Then I also got a chance to join some like clubs where I used to like regularly participate. For 1 year, I was able to participate as an opinion editor in Iowa State Daily. That is a student newspaper. So I used to write. So we have like every week we have a discussion, and we used to write like editorials. So a lot of things actually. So it was a great experience. Actually, it made my life basically.
When you mentioned
So
clubs, I'm sure people got excited, but then it turned out to be an editorial club.
yeah, exactly. Speaking basically like speaking, I did not have like a strong education. So I knew that how I can improve my like writing or my speaking English. So, and I come to know that there are like these kind of clubs where international people come
Mhm.
join, and they do not talk about their education. So they generally talk about like things. So I said, okay, I should go there and want to like discuss many other things except education, because in departments we talk about just like assignments, homeworks, groups, research, classes, everything, but that is not like the regular daily life. So
So,
yeah, and then
any prospective Fulbright students who are listening to this who might be afraid that they might not have a strong educational background, or they might be from smaller cities in Pakistan, and they might be afraid of what the US might hold for them, what advice would you give to them to, take your shot, go for the Fulbright? What advice would you give to them?
I basically, Shahzad Bhai, regularly arrange these kind of sessions as well. And I encourage students, because when I was preparing for Fulbright at University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, I did not know I did not have anybody to guide me even about GRE. So when I won Fulbright, I had a pledge with myself that if I go to US and I get successful, I will guide students. even like free of cost or like despite of my busy schedule. So this is what I do, and I do encourage people regular basis. Every day I receive like messages, emails. I have my small YouTube channel as well, where people like write comments in my videos. And the coming to your point, I do encourage, and I tell them like, give your shot. If you have potential, you think. And because education system in US is not like that, it doesn't mean that you belong to a rural area and we should select you or they should select you.
Mm.
You have to be successful as well. So, and if you think you can make it, you have potential, you have some like versatile kind of like nature or a personality, give it a try and you will enjoy that. And there will be a lot of opportunity for you to learn all this stuff.
Take your opportunities, apply. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for this advice. Hopefully people who are listening will apply, and somebody will send you an email thanking you for these words of encouragement. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, and thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, bye.